Welcome back to the Something in the Wilderness podcast. My name's Steve, and in each episode of the show, we talk about a different Andrew McMahon song. Sometimes it's just me, and sometimes I have the luck of bringing in a guest. So today I have Andrew Ware with me. Now don't get confused, we're talking about Andrew McMahon, but with me I have Andrew Ware as a guest. Andrew and I met at an Andrew show about a year and a half ago, and have crossed paths once or twice since then. So welcome to the show, Andrew.
Thanks a lot for having me on, Steve. Looking forward to talking about Andrew. It's something that listening to your pod, just the passion that you have for music in general, is something that I love as a music nerd myself, and I love talking about my favorite artists, so I'm stoked to be doing this.
I appreciate that. You're exactly the type of people I like to have on here. I'm totally a music nerd. I'm like a set list nerd. You know, once I get into an artist, I follow them, till the bitter end. Like, there's so many artists that I've been listening to for 20, 25 years or more. I like to research them and look them up. Since I'm talking to Andrew, and we're talking about Andrew McMahon, I think I'm going to try to call Andrew McMahon today. And if I'm talking about the band, I'm going to call them The Wilderness, because I usually refer to his band as Andrew as well on the show. So I'm going to try this. We'll see how it goes. But just to avoid confusion, how about that? So, Andrew, why don't you start by telling the listeners a little bit about yourself?
All right. Well, my name is Andrew Ware, and I'm here because Steve and I are friends. We met at the Crowfoot shows outside of Detroit, the pod shows, which were interesting. They were a lot of fun. We all ended up moving, I remember that, to get better views of the stage, because the way that they had it set up was so weird. Looking back on it, it still doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Instead of curving the stage or curving the pods to where you could see, they just had them in straight lines. And so if you were on a side of the stage, you couldn't see the stage hardly at all. And I remember getting there,
Right.
We were like, oh, we've got a great pod, we've got great seats, and we got there and we're just like, oh, this is interesting. And then we all ended up moving, and it didn't matter anyway, because the set list was so electric that night.
It was.
That was an amazing set list. But Steve and I are friends, and then we saw each other again at the Andrew Dashboard show in Cincinnati.
You guys were waiting. You got in line early, and we got there a little bit later in the day.
Yeah, and I think you all were sitting in the balcony.
We had balcony seats, technically. We ended up on the main floor for Andrew, and I guess anybody could go down there. I mean, we did. And then we went up for Dashboard. We went back up to the balcony. Worked out pretty well, actually, but we didn't get up front like a lot of you guys were. I think you guys were up front, right?
Yeah. Michelle was less than a month away from giving birth at the time, so she had to lean on the barricade.
Oh my gosh, that's right. Your wife was quite pregnant at the time.
Yes.
What a trooper to be at a rock concert in the front row, being 8 or 9 months pregnant.
I was blown away. We did 2 shows. Because when he announced Bloomington, she was like, we should go to Bloomington. And I found out later she really pushed to go to Bloomington. I wouldn't have. It was, I think, a 7-hour drive. We spent the night. There were no other dates on the Hello Gone Days tour that worked for us. Because everything was during the week. And Cincinnati was the only one on the weekend.
Right.
And she really pushed for Bloomington. And I found out later, and she told me, she's like, it's because I didn't think I was going to make it to Cincinnati. That wasn't going to happen.
Oh, yeah, because she was so close.
But she did, so. And she
Dang.
actually snuck up to the balcony, and I got her spot in the front row for Dashboard, so that was fun.
Very cool.
But yeah, but also I'm here because I love Andrew. And I know we're going to talk more about my history with Andrew, so I won't get too much into that, but I love his music. I love him as a person. I've loved watching him grow in all 3 bands that he's been in. I'm 34, so I think you just turned 40. That's right.
Just turned 40.
And kind of grown up with him. When he's singing about high school stuff with something corporate, I was in middle school going into high school. And when he started to sing about kind of like a deep relationship in what is, in my opinion, a perfect album, Everything in Transit. I was a senior in high school when I really got into it. And I came out in 2005, and I wasn't a senior until 2007. I actually didn't pick it up until my senior year of high school, the summer before my senior year. So So, but it was out for a while. I was a kid. I didn't really know much about what he was doing. I knew he had something corporate, and I was like, "Oh, Jack's Mannequin at Target. I'll buy this album." And
Uh huh.
everybody, I mean, all of my friends were like, "You have to, buy the album, buy the album." And then I just remember my friends were like, "You actually purchased the album? Like, can we burn it?" Dating myself a little. They're like,
Hmm.
let me borrow it because I want to burn it." So,
Originally, I had all the something corporate stuff on burned CDs because I was downloading all the MP3s individually, getting all the separate MP3s to put together for the album. Actually, were you into something corporate while they were a band, or did you come in for Jack's Mannequin and then kind of go backward?
I was into something corporate. I knew who they were. I really, really liked them. I had friends that really, really liked them
Mm-hmm.
in high school, but I didn't have any of their CDs or anything.
Okay.
And it wasn't until I got my iPod before I went to college, iPod Nano,
We still have one of those here, amazingly.
and I went and I downloaded. That thing was awesome. I wish I still had that,
Hmm.
honestly. Like, I know it's all on my phone now, but there's something about that little. Anyway, I love that little device. But I downloaded on LimeWire. Shout out to all the people who pirated Andrew's music, because there's been so many people on this podcast that have been like, "Yeah, I downloaded the songs on LimeWire. That's how I got them." And I remember before vacation, I went and I downloaded just every single thing from Jack's Mannequin and something corporate that I could find. So
Hmm.
that would have been 2007. I graduated in '07, so it was the summer before I went to college.
Yeah.
And I just remember I had like the acoustic version of Wait. I had all of Audio Boxer. Like none of it was organized or anything like that, but I
Right.
just had all these. I had demos and all this stuff.
Yeah. I still have a lot of those MP3s to this day.
I just remember like when he was, and you've talked so much about the Instagram live sessions, which I absolutely love.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
When he was playing some of these, I'm like, I haven't heard these since that summer, or like when I had my iPod Nano, or whenever I
Right.
stopped listening or like replaced Andrew's music, because he only held 1,000 songs. So
I can relate to what you're saying about, knowing Andrew's music all this time. And the way I always put it, you've probably heard me say this before on the show, but it's like he's written the soundtrack to my life because those different eras, like high school. It was a little after high school for me when I got into him, even the end of college, but just kind of going back to those moments of my life, for the last 20 years. And it's like, I can totally relate to that. Today, we're actually, ironically, after all that, we're talking about a more modern Andrew McMahon song. We're going to be talking about Fire Escape, which is probably one of the most well known songs out of the Wilderness era. Maybe not the most well known, but one of them, I'd say. But I have this memory of hearing this song along with some of those other pre release singles and thinking, yeah, this is a little different from what I'm used to from Andrew. But I also feel like I kind of lumped Fire Escape in with the other singles at the time, which is kind of surprising because now I feel like it's such a standout track from that era of Andrew that it's kind of hard to believe that it was just one of the bunch back then. But the band is Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness. It's track 5 on Zombies on Broadway, which was the fourth song because that intro track. The album was released on February 10th, 2017. But as I mentioned, it did come out as a single a whole 5 months earlier on September 9th, 2016. So this song's actually been out more than 6 years. The single peaked at number 4 on the U.S. Alternative Airplay chart and number 16 on the Hot Rock and Alternative Songs chart, which is actually pretty impressive. Surprisingly, it did not cross over to the Billboard chart like Cecilia did a couple years earlier, though. Andrew, do you remember where you were or how you first came across this particular song?
it's really interesting listening you talk about that, because as you say that, I realize I must have heard it as a single, because I remember hearing So Close, which was also a single off of that album.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it was tracking him very closely at that point because I was really excited for Zombies on Broadway.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't actually remember that necessarily, like the first time I heard it. Like the most significant memory of that song for me, other than it being our first dance at our wedding, we danced to the acoustic version of that song, and I'll get to that later. But
Oh,
the
nice.
and that's actually why it's when you gave me, when I was going to my short list of songs, I was like, Fire Escape's on it for that reason. And for this reason, I didn't see Andrew, although I loved him in high school and college and after college. I didn't see Andrew for the first time ever in like any of his iterations until 2017 on the Zombies on Broadway tour in Louisville at the Mercury Ballroom. So he opened the set with Fire Escape.
Nice.
That is like my biggest memory of Fire Escape is like waiting to see a guy I've now seen 14 times since that day, but
Hmm.
waiting to see my absolute favorite musician of all time on stage, bringing the house down with Fire Escape, because like that is such an energetic song. There's so much
Oh, for
like,
sure.
and live, you've seen it live. There's so much energy, and you've got the wacky, wavy, inflatable, arm flailing tubeman going, and you've
Hmm.
got Andrew opening his show anyway is just electric because he's so happy to be playing and taking the stage, and it's just like you just feel the room just morph into like this out of control train. It's amazing. Like it's just
Yeah.
like the way he hits the stage, it's just unreal. Very few artists I've ever seen do what he does with a piano. That's what,
That's why we keep going back for that energy, that live show.
yeah.
And if I remember correctly, it's interesting that you say he opened the show with Fire Escape when you the first time you ever saw him, because I believe he opened with Fire Escape when we saw him in Pontiac.
Yes, he did.
That was kind of a nice surprise because he played it. I was there on Friday night that weekend as well, and he played it the night before, but he played it like toward the end of the set. So it was really exciting when he opened with that the second night.
Like since our wedding, when Michelle's there, and she loves that song anyway. But like, she like when she's there, she's like she'll just like grab my hand and like we'll just start going crazy
Hmm.
whenever
I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, significant moment. I mean, I remember our my wife's and my wedding song, and so we still have it on like all our playlists and everything. So it's not an Andrew song, but
Yeah, my wife, Michelle, funnily enough, didn't even know who Andrew was. Our first trip together, dating, we took like a day trip to St. Louis, and
hmm.
then I looked and saw that Pen and Piano was going to be in St. Louis the next Wednesday, and I wanted to go to Pen and Piano, but I think it was just one of those things like it just if only if it worked out and all
Hmm.
this stuff, and I'm like, oh my god, he's gonna be in St. Louis on Wednesday. Do you want to go back? And she's like, sure. I don't, and she didn't even know who he was. She was like, all right,
Nice.
yeah, let's go. Why not? And she fell in love with him from that moment on. And how could you not? I don't know if you saw Pen and Piano, but it was just the most.
I've seen clips of it.
It was the most unique concert I've ever seen. Just the way that Andrew would leave the stage and Zach would come on the stage, and then Zach would leave and Alan would come out. It was such a cool moment on the podcast. You've talked about like how Andrew is like family, and like you can just see that he loves the people that he's on stage with. And
Hmm.
because like Penny Piano is such like an intimate show, you just saw how much him and Bobby and Zach and Alan loved each other on that stage, and you saw Andrew
Yeah.
saying, I'm not the most talented individual here tonight. There are other people with me on the stage that I love and adore, and I want you to hear their music, and I want to give them the spotlight. And that's in all of my favorite artists across the board. Like that's what I like. Even if I think like you look at a guy like Dave Grohl and being a Foo Fighters fan, like he's so good. I mean, he is probably the most talented musician of this generation, but
Hmm.
in my opinion, but you see him take a step back and be like so many times just be like there's other people including the members of my own band that are as talented if not more talented than me, and I would not be here in this position wherever he's playing. Like, and I never got to see him unfortunately, but I'd never be here without the people that I have around me.
Hmm.
That humbleness when like somebody like Grohl, or for me personally even more so like with Andrew, who I think is like a poet,
Yeah.
is like, hey, there's people that are better than me, and that's okay to admit that and to
Hmm.
like give them the spotlight and to tell them that I love them.
That sounds like a pretty special experience to see that show. I did not get to see that tour. but I have seen clips online, and I've heard from other people similar stories about how special that was.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first time I think I heard Fire Escape may have been the music video. I'm not sure, but we'll come back to that because I definitely want to talk to you about the music video. I'm not sure if you've seen it, but I definitely want to talk more about that after a little bit here.
Yeah, I've seen it.
You have seen it,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, we have some things to talk about there. So let's talk some production notes here. The track was produced by Derek Furman, Greg Wattenberg, and Robopop and recorded at Arcade Studios in New York City. It was mixed by Claudius Mittendorfer. Robopop's real name, by the way, is Danielle O'Melio, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. What's interesting in the liner notes for Zombies on Broadway is that as a producer, it lists him as Robopop, but as the songwriter, he co-wrote the song as well, it lists him by his formal name. But if you don't know who Robopop or Daniel O'Melio is, he's done songwriting and producing for a lot of artists. Like, I couldn't possibly name them all, but I encourage you all to go on Wikipedia and look at his resume. The last two things he's done, interestingly to me, is he produced the last two Weezer EPs. They're doing the seasons thing where they're doing a spring, fall, all four seasons. And do I know the seasons? And he produced the last two of them, actually. But he's produced for other artists like Gym Class Heroes, Maroon 5, and Owl City as well. So he's been like kind of all over in the genre, but also like kind of adjacent genres, if you will. So he's pretty well known in the industry. On this track, Andrew plays piano and he sings, and we have guitars and programming by Furman and Wattenberg, additional programming by Robopop, and background vocals by 6 guys, including some of the ones I've mentioned. I'm not going to list them all. So in an interview I talked about previously on the show, McMahon talks a lot about how New York influenced this album. So Andrew, have you ever been to New York City before?
Yeah, a few times.
Okay.
I actually grew up. I don't really remember those trips as much. I went back in 2011. That would be the more memorable. But actually, until I was about 6, grew up in New Haven, Connecticut. We would go down every time people would come to visit. So I've been there actually quite a few times.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Wow. You live in a pretty different area. So you've lived on the East Coast, the Midwest, and kind of the South now, huh?
Yeah, now the South. Yeah.
Oh, you've lived around a bit. Do you feel like Zombies on Broadway reminds you of New York City? Do you see any parallels there? Does it feel like New York City to you?
If everything in Transit makes me think of summer, Zombies makes me think of winter in a lot of ways. And not all of it. Like Island Radio, I don't think necessarily falls into that category.
Sure.
But the opening with the subway sounds into Brooklyn, You're Killing Me, and then the ending and birthday song, which again ends with subway sounds.
Right.
Andrew, as you know, is so intentional in the way that he mixes and records and produces and masters a CD. Like other people are driving, I get at the wheel, but he's overseeing it. You know, if he's the one that built the highway, I guess would be the way I would phrase it. You see his handprint and how he wanted it to feel like New York on the album as a whole, just coursing throughout the entire album. Just the way that he presents every single song in the album, it almost too feels like a little bit like North, and I think that we're in that he traveled to do the album. Like
Correct,
they traveled to Seattle to record North.
Yep.
He traveled to New York to record this album and to kind of like find himself and find something very different.
And capture certain feelings, right?
Expected. Yeah, and to get this feeling. You see this amazing growth in that album. Going back to something you've discussed in the podcast before of if this album would have been in place of The Glass Passenger, if, you know, he never gets sick and he's able to travel, or gets sick and is still able to travel to New York to record this album after everything in transit, I don't think you would get anywhere near the masterpiece that is Zombies on Broadway. I think it would be a good album. I think I say that somewhat in that The Glass Passenger, although I still love it, is probably my least favorite album from him. you have such maturity in, you know, if you look at birthday songs, Love and Great Buildings, Dead Man's Dollar, like you have this level of maturity in songwriting and craft that I just don't think you would have had if he would have recorded it right after Everything in Transit.
It was a decade of his life that he had gained as perspective to write that album and make that album, make that Zombies album. So it would have been so incredibly different 10 years sooner, and it would have been too soon to make that. So the Glass Passenger was probably the right move for him at the time, especially based on what happened. But who knows what we would have gotten if he, like you said, he hadn't been sick. It's cool to look at all of Andrew's catalog and kind of where he's been, and you can kind of see the traces of his life throughout every album and where he was.
Totally agree.
You said you've seen Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness 14 times. Have you ever seen a live show where he didn't perform this song?
No.
I haven't either. I'd have to think really hard about it, I mean, to be sure, but I'm almost positive that I haven't either in the Wilderness era, since the song has come out, let's say. Because the first time I saw the band since the song came out was summer of 17, so it would have been about 5 months after this song came out. And every time I've seen the band since then, they've played this song.
Yeah, this is one of their new staples. This and,
Definitely.
of course, Cecilia, High Dive. I feel like Dead Man's Dollar's on that list, too.
If you look at Setlist FM, it says that he's played Fire Escape 319 times. I have a feeling that number's higher than that. Like we've said, I bet you can count on pretty much every time he's played a live show since Zombies on Broadway came out, and in the last 5.5 years, he's played that song, I'm pretty sure. As I mentioned in a recent episode, and as we've talked about already, like, this is such an energetic song in concert, and like you called it a staple. Absolutely, it's like it's one that I think we all expect when we go to the show and look forward to. I mean, at least a lot of people do. I know I do. I'm the kind of fan that when I go to concerts, I do want to hear different songs, but I tell you what, there's a few songs that he plays every time that I want to hear every time, and this is one of them. So that's what's kind of ironic there. It's like, oh, I hope he plays some deeper cuts and like things we haven't heard in a while. But it's like, and maybe even when I'm on my way to the show, I'm not thinking, oh, I can't wait to hear Fire Escape. But when he plays it, I feel it, and I'm just like, I'm so glad he's playing this song. It's such an exciting song, and it really helps that it's one of my wife's favorite songs by him. So I know she's excited to hear it in concert as well. And now going on to the next generation of fans, my oldest daughter, it's one of her favorite songs to hear as well.
That's great.
So that makes the song even more exciting to hear live for me. But I think it's become pretty notorious in the live show. We also mentioned Instagram live streams. He played this one twice that I know of in the 2020 live stream era, as I've started to call it lately, now that we're 2.5 years out of that time frame with the live stream era or whatever. But I'll link one of those in the show notes. He does a great rendition of it, very bare bones, just him and a piano in his house. Let's talk a little bit more about your history seeing him live while we're on the subject of live shows. So you've seen Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness 14 times in the last 5.5 years, is that right?
Yes, I've seen him every tour, I think. Because I saw him on Zombies on Broadway. The next show was this little show in Bloomington, Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
That was a fun show. There was no barricade between him and the crowd.
Okay.
It was at this like when he says in Hammer and Strings, when he talks about the old punk rock clubs, like I picture this club called the Bluebird, I think is the name of it, and I might have gotten that wrong, but in Bloomington, and Jimmy Eat World's played there like after him. Like, it's probably a 300 capacity, if even that. And
wow,
like, Jimmy Eat World could play could play anything they wanted to, and
yeah, thousands.
so to see Andrew there was really cool. But
yeah,
then I saw him on that little winter tour he did with Zach and Bobby in Cincinnati.
The Winter in the Wilderness or something like that?
No, that was the next year. The winter
Okay.
tour that he did was just randomly, I can't remember which tour it was after, but it was just him and Bobby and Zach. And they just played some random places. Like, I think it ended up being like a fairly big tour, but it was just the three of them playing music together. And
Well, I definitely missed that one.
Yeah, I saw him in Cincy, and that's where I saw him play there, Katie for the first time.
Nice.
Saw him on Winter in the Wilderness, saw him on Pen and Piano, saw him on Upside Down Flowers a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
Saw him on the Hello Gone Days. Drove to Schaumburg or Chicago for the Everything Transit 15 year,
Mm-hmm.
and then saw him at the Pod Show. But I think significantly, just sharing a little bit of my story, getting a little personal, and you know this about me, but the reason I didn't see him until 2017, although I did, it's not that I didn't see concerts, but I got sober in 2017, and
Mm-hmm.
he was the first big thing I did after getting sober was going to see him, and it like
Wow.
that's why the Louisville show has so much significance for me.
Yeah.
I'd waited and I'd missed. I could have saw him with Jack's Mannequin. I could have maybe seen him with something corporate. My parents are a little conservative, so they weren't like too big on letting me go to the rock shows or whatever. But I still did. So some. But when it was up to me and I could have like traveled to see him with Jack's Mannequin, I didn't. And being able to see him in 2017 and now being able to follow him a little bit, like buying those tickets for Detroit or Pontiac, originally Detroit, but then got moved to Pontiac. Being able to be like, yeah, I can drive 7 hours. Like, that's like I have the money to do something like this. That was really significant for me because originally I think the first date was right after I would have been 4 or 5 years. Well, I'm 5.5 years sober now, so
Congratulations.
thank you. So like for whatever amount of time 2021 was, I can't remember.
They took place in June 2021, but they were supposed to be in what, April or May?
I
Maybe
think
May.
May. And it was
Yeah.
going to be like right after because like my sobriety date is April 16th. So it was going to be like right
Mm-hmm.
after. And I was like, that's so cool that I can like buy these tickets and go to this concert now
Yeah.
and have the freedom to do that. Seeing Andrew live to me is directly linked with my sobriety. And now I'm able to see him every tour. And now, I'm married, have a kid. And now we're already talking about like summer when he comes to Nashville. How, we're going to get VIP and we're going to put headphones on our daughter Nora and
Mm-hmm.
like go to the show and like Andrew will get to meet Nora and just the ability to just be like, yeah, I know I'm going to be able to do that. Andrew means so much to me in such a significant way because of that.
That's pretty personal connection to the music and to those shows. And it's amazing that you have that you can link those two, that you can see the connection between those two things. And yeah, I love that.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
Ironically, the songwriting aspect of Fire Escape, I feel like it's about like staying out late and partying. Andrew was in this mindset when he was writing this album. He was struggling with being away from home, being away from his family, and not being able to be with the people and the things that are important versus being out late and hanging with friends and getting into trouble and things like that, staying out till 4 a.m. and doing everything excessively and sometimes to his detriment. Like, I know he had to take a break from the recording process in New York City and return back to California because he was like, I was just going way too hard, doing way too much. But then we have these lyrics that it kind of celebrates that lifestyle. So what are your thoughts on what he wrote the song about based on what we know about the lyrics and maybe what you've heard and things?
What I love about this conversation as a whole is just the different interpretations people can get from songs.
Definitely. Yeah.
And
I
when they
have
hear
found that with
them.
this podcast for sure.
Because Fire Escape, I mean, he's said it on stage before when I've seen him, like the song's about a bender,
Hmm.
and so he's very open about what the meaning of the song is.
Yeah.
And then my wife and I, though, they're dropping lines like "beggars in the snow" is one of the lines in the song.
Hmm.
But you also have walking home, your hand in mine, tattoos on the river line. The morning birds are taking flight. Either way, I thought that you should know.
Yeah.
You're my number one. You're the reason I'm still up at dawn. And then in the chorus, we looked at it as like this is a very romantic song too.
Hmm.
And I think you see Andrew's two worlds colliding in that song. I
Definitely.
think you see his like partying New York City, away from Kelly, away from Cecilia lifestyle that he was leading, and then realizing, oh my gosh, like this is way too much. I have to get away and I have to go back to my family. And then he had to come back out to New York. But then you see the final verse of the song where I think he's talking to Kelly. I mean, who else is he? I mean, he could be. I don't want to say who else is he talking to because obviously I don't know what exactly he was thinking. But it seems to me he's talking to Kelly and he's talking like, "You're the reason I'm still up at dawn." Like all of this is cool or whatever, but in the end, you're the reason. You're the thing that keeps me hanging on. It's not the party and it's not, the good times. It's his family. And you see that it's in the album as a whole, especially, going to Birthday Song, the end of the album, where he really goes into that. And it's
Yes.
probably the most personal song he's ever written, probably.
It's up there for sure.
I think you see that from how little he plays it live.
I think all these songs like Fire Escape, it's telling a story, and it leads to that culmination at the end of that album, which is just so cool about that.
I think Fire Escape too is like one of the reasons I love it so much is that you have the whole conflict of the album in that song.
Mm-hmm.
With the ending of Fire Escape, and even the music video, I think is the ending of the music video is somewhat significant in that. As silly as the music video is, before we get there, I don't want to fast forward to it, but like
it's said that when he was on his trip to New York City to write this song, he encountered these larger than life characters, such as we hear about the acrobat, the banker, and his oxblood friend. I love, by the way, when he says his oxblood friend in concert, when he sings that line, and he kind of like always pauses for a second.
Yeah.
Do you know why Bobby Anderson's also called Bob Oxblood, or what the significance of that? I mean, that's his nickname, right? I don't know.
I don't. I've actually asked around
Mm-hmm.
from people in the AmFam. So it was Raw, or Bobby Raw Anderson.
Right.
Or Bobby Anderson originally, then Bobby Raw, and then Bobby Oxblood, and now he introduces him as Bobby Raw again, right? At the benefit. He's been, and that's been over the past couple years, he's went back to Raw, which is...
Yeah, I feel like he was calling him Bob Oxblood during the Zombies era, specifically.
Yeah.
And that's why I wasn't sure, like, where that came from. I don't know if it came from those times or this song specifically, like he wrote it into the song and then it became a thing, or what. I don't know which preceded which.
I think the name preceded the song.
Okay.
But now he's back to Raw, which I don't understand.
Yeah, I don't know the
either.
I don't know the significance of that nickname either. I know that Bobby lived in New York City for a time, and it was during those years because he came and recorded guitar on some of the songs, not this one in particular that we're talking about, but some of them. And he was hanging out with him. He was one of the buddies he was hanging out with late at night. I've got this quote from a Washington Post interview that Andrew gave to promote the album at the time. The underlying theme became reconciling the side of my nature that's predisposed toward late nights and drinking too much and maybe having more fun than I'm supposed to for a man my age. The city brings that side of me to the surface. A lot of this record was about getting my head around that and trying to get it under control. Again, we have that story throughout the album of there's this part of my life, but there's the important things too, the things that I need to get back to, my daughter, my wife. I think the album was therapeutic for him in helping maybe not solve, but work through at the time some of the things he was trying to work on. So
Definitely.
But Fire Escape is more of a celebratory song, let's face it. You mentioned, and I like that interpretation, like you're my number one. His number one is Kelly or his family, right? Kelly and C. And that's really who he's there for. It's a celebratory song about celebrating life, being with the people you love, things like that. And I think we feel that when we talked about seeing it in concert. I think we all feel that in our hearts when he plays that song. Let's talk a little bit about the sound of the song. Like I said, when I first heard this song, I'm pretty sure it was the first one I heard. It was the first single off of Zombies on Broadway. I'm pretty sure it was the first song I heard of that era. And I knew the sound was different from what we'd heard from Andrew before. When the song starts, everybody knows what song. Everybody who's ever heard the song knows what song he's playing when he starts the song. And he does this whoa-oh, whoa-oh. But obviously this is a really fun, upbeat song. The adjectives I would use to describe it, motivational, inspirational.
Yeah.
And it sounds like maybe that's some of the reasons that you used it as your yours and your wife's wedding song.
It's really one of the reasons we use it for our wedding song is like part you have the old life and then you have like what's to come. He has this, he says a good girl, beautiful yellow-haired daughter.
Hmm.
Like, he has so much more to experience and to embrace. And we've seen him do that and it's been amazing. And what's so cool about it for me is as somebody who like did go too far into that, and it sounds like Andrew did, like he
Hmm.
came back.
He had to come back to his family, to what was important. Now, I know because we went back and forth on which song to talk about a few times. You mentioned synesthesia as being something that's really a song that's really important to you as well. Do you see any parallels between those two songs? Because I've also seen in reviews comparisons drawn between Fire Escape specifically and synesthesia. Do you make that connection, or do you see them as two completely different things?
I definitely see a connection. Just the way that synesthesia came out of nowhere, like you didn't know what he was gonna do. Jack's Mannequin
Yeah.
was done. You hadn't heard anything from him in, I think, People and Things is 2011, and then Pop Underground is 2013, and it's been a couple years. So you don't know what's gonna happen. You know that Jack's Mannequin's done, that People and
Hmm.
Things is the final album, but what is Andrew gonna do? Is he? And he talks about it in the book. He almost didn't know. Like, is he
Hmm.
gonna reinvent himself another time, try to do it again? And then you have synesthesia, which is like such a groundbreaking song. It's my number one song ever. I've got it tattooed on my arm. But you have for me, the reason it's my favorite song ever. If somebody would, who is Andrew McMahon? That's the song I would play for them. I would actually play them all of the Pop Underground because I think it brings together the Wilderness, Something Corporate, and Jack's Mannequin perfectly.
Yeah.
Those four songs, Synesthesia kicking it off. In the same way, Cecilia had made it big. Andrew Man in the Wilderness album had done pretty well. You had the Canyons EP. You had a lot of momentum riding on it. And then you get a song like Fire Escape. Andrew was going through this very personal time of his reinventing himself. He already had one album, so it's not quite the same, but he was really, is he going to be able to keep making music? Even doing the pod shows, he's like, I don't know if people want to come see me anymore. He's like, I think that's what's so cool. Like, people love it.
I loved when he became so personal in that those live streams when he talked about that. Yeah, that exact thing is like, I don't know if people are still going to come out to the shows, after all this. So it was very candid of him to just express that to his fans.
Going back to like the lyrics, I see synesthesia is a journey as well.
Hmm.
He's talking and he talks about fun, getting a Grammy, and he toured with them before they were big. Like he was friends with them, and
Hmm.
like they're having all this success. And I've never made a gold record. I've never been to Mars. I love that he corrected that on the 1111. It's like I've
Yeah.
done one of those things now
Yep.
because everything in transit finally went gold. But
Yeah. Last year.
but you have this journey, and then also the same journey into. I saw this picture of my niece twisting high above the narrow beam, and my brother looks so proud, like he woke up in perfect dream.
Hmm.
And this is before C, but he knew, he's like, there's something so much greater than a gold record, and it's my family, it's Kelly, and now C, and so I definitely see a parallel between the two songs,
Hmm.
and both of them being journeys, and both of them ending in like the true place of happiness and fulfillment is with my family. And you and I are both married, and we just had our first. I can say, like, that's it. That's where fulfillment is found. Like, it's fun doing other stuff. It's fun
Hmm.
going to concerts, for example. Like, that's a
Yeah.
great thing. But at the end of the day, like, the happiest I ever am is, with my daughter in my arms and just sitting there.
I loved that picture of you with your daughter. You were watching the live stream together, right? Of the
Yeah,
1111 show.
yeah.
Very cool. Not just because, the whole like, oh, getting them into the music early, but just like, just showing that connection. Not only that you want to share it with her, but also I liked your post. You said, and I can't remember exactly what you said. I'm going to paraphrase, but you're right where you want to be right now. In a way, you wish you wished you're at the show, but you know what? It was better that you could be at home with your daughter and watch the show on TV. So
Because actually, my wife and I have been waiting for it to be in the Midwest because it's been in Philly and L.A. or Anaheim. We've always wanted to go, and I actually had a ticket, but it's like I can't go.
yeah, you had to be home.
Like she wanted me to go, like she kind of, and I was like, it's okay. Like, you know what? I'm just gonna stay here, and we're gonna watch the live stream and have fun, and it's gonna be better. And it was so much better, and that's where fulfillment comes from. Like I think that's why I relate to those songs so much. This whole album, this new album, is a love letter to Kelly and Cecilia. Like, that's amazing. It's not anything else. I found it in my family.
The next step in the journey. So you mentioned some lines from the song in the bridge. Would you say those are your favorite lyrics in the song right there? Like walking home, your hand in mine, tattoos on the river line, morning birds are taking flight. Either way, I thought that you should know. Or were there some other lyrics that stood out to you?
I'm actually pulling up the lyrics.
Oh yeah, I have them right in front of me too. Definitely, like so much easier that way.
I also really like.
I like the stories in the verses.
I like pocket change in subway cars. Our big ideas filled empty bars. You might be from the moon or Mars. Either way, I'm never going home.
Hey, another Mars reference. That's interesting.
Yeah.
In Synesthesia, right?
Yeah, he does.
Yeah. Again, I always look for those connections, and I love the way he sings that verse the one you just read. I feel like I'm following Andrew on a journey through the city in these lyrics, and that's what I love. By the time we get to the chorus, you're my number one, you're the reason I'm still up at dawn, just to see your face, we'll be going strong with the vampire's baby, we belong awake. That bridge leading up, like coming back to the chorus, that is my favorite part of the song. I don't know what you think. Just like that's the climax of the song. It's like and I know that's probably what it was intended to be, but it's that part in the concert that it's like everybody just, it's like a breakdown. Everybody just like is shouting that final chorus. That part of the song makes it for me. Do you have a favorite part of the song, or?
I think it's that, but I also, looking back on the first verse and why it makes me think of Michelle is, you might be from the moon or Mars, either way, I'm never going home. I think he is talking about like these big characters that he sees in New York City. But when you juxtapose that against the end of the song where he's talking about just to see your face, they're the reason I'm still walking home, your hand in mine, tattoos on the river line. Like he's going home with Kelly and then singing, I think, to her, you're the reason I'm still up at dawn, just to see your face. We'll be going strong with the vampires. Baby, we belong awake. Like that idea of like, I love that because like I know when I hear him talk about Kelly and the way I feel about Michelle, like she was somebody like I and I'll never be able to capture that in just like a sentence or a moment or a picture. Like she's so much bigger than anything or anyone I've ever met in my life, and like I'm overwhelmed by her in the best way possible. And I know that's how you feel about Marcy. Like that line of like, you might be from the moon or Mars, either way I'm never going home. Like I'm never leaving whatever is going on here. Like, and he's talking about a party, but I also feel like there's a double meaning to that where he's like, I'm never leaving you, I'm never gonna go away from you, you're so much bigger, you're so massive to me. And I think in the way he talks about the characters he met in New York, the banker, the acrobat, all these things in these interview, in the end of it he's talking about what I feel like he's talking about Kelly. He might not be, but I interpret it as that she's bigger than the acrobat or the banker or whoever, my Oxford friend. Like she's even on a grander scale than that thing or that person that I met.
I'm loving this new perspective I'm getting on these verses. It gives me a chance to re-experience the song, I think, now when I listen to it.
I think Andrew's intentionally trying to like tell like a multi-dimensional sided story.
He doesn't. Sometimes he does, but he doesn't always spell it out. He leaves it open to interpretation because it might mean different things to him as well, and he wants it to be open to meaning different things to us. You told me earlier that you and Michelle used the acoustic version as your wedding song. Which version was that? Was it like something you found on YouTube, or was it the Spotify version, or what?
No, we did not use the one that talked about pizza at the beginning.
I didn't. I actually don't remember that, but
There's like a really good acoustic version on YouTube that has this ad for like Domino's or something at the beginning. It's really
oh yes, yeah. Oh,
yeah,
that one. Yes,
yeah,
the 91X. Yeah, they're like
yeah.
eat Domino's, sponsored by Domino's. So you did not use that one.
We did not use that one. No, we actually on the Facebook group, I asked for an acoustic version of the song that didn't have the pizza ad at the beginning for our wedding, and I
Uh
was
huh.
sent an MP3 of it. I'm not actually sure what version it is. It's just him, a piano. It doesn't have the whoa-ohs in it though.
It might be the Studios. So I'll put a couple links in the show notes. It might be the 2017 Pace Studios. It might be that version from 91X, just with the beginning cut out then. I'm not sure. One of those didn't have the whoa-ohs in it, though. I don't remember which now. There's a lot of versions of it out there. If you put an Andrew Mann Fire Escape in YouTube, I mean, you get pages and pages of results between like full band live stuff and just him on a piano. There's people that cover Fire Escape out there. But yeah, I guess if I listen to the Pace Studios version, it probably gives me at least an idea of what you guys had at your wedding. So I brought up the Spotify thing because there's an EP called Spotify Sessions, I think, and he does an Empire of the Sun cover, and he does, I don't know if you want to call it an acoustic version, I think you could, of Fire Escape. It's different. It's a full band version, so it's not just him on a piano, but you can hear the individual instruments, which I appreciate. What I find interesting about the different versions of Fire Escape to me is that so often on this show, I say, oh, I really like, and I do, I really like the way that these songs sound with just a piano, but I actually appreciate Fire Escape more as this big anthemic arena type of sound.
I agree.
I like all of Andrew's stuff on just a piano, but I definitely prefer the big sound of the album version, which I can't say about every one of his more electronic songs. A lot of times I like the acoustic or piano only versions better of those, but in this case, I think it's the experience of seeing it live so many times and just having that feeling that I have when I see it live. I really want that big sound out of this song. I definitely recommend checking out those other versions. I'll link the ones on YouTube. You have to have a Spotify account in order to access that Spotify one, so I'll link that one in the show notes, but you'd have to have Spotify to get that. So let's talk about the music video before we wrap this up. Initial thoughts on the music video.
The music video is hilarious. It's so weird.
It is. It is out there, which is not typical overall. If you look at the full, like, Andrew Man in the Wilderness music videos, right? It's not typical.
If you look at his, even like his something corporate, Jack's Panic and stuff, it's more just kind of standard music video fare.
Mm-hmm.
I guess So Close is a little bit different too, so maybe he was going for a
Yes.
different vibe. Back to the Fire Escape is just, it's wacky. It's absolutely like, I guess no pun intended for the arm floating tube man, but I mean it is just, it's out there. It's so, I love it. I think it's hilarious. I don't know what it has to do with the song.
I don't know either. Like, it's an inflatable love story, as it says at the beginning, which just sets the tone, just the title alone. And yeah, so they're setting up for a concert, and you just think it's going to be one of those like concert videos, like they do a lot, like a lot of bands do. And then it just turns into like the fantasy or dream world of the inflatable and him going out and meeting the inflatable of his dreams and falling in love. So I mentioned earlier, I think that may have been the first time I heard this song was watching this video. It may or may not have been. But the reason I thought of that is because I watched this video this afternoon for the first time in I don't know how long. I don't know if I've sat down and watched this video in years, maybe since around the time it came out. And it kind of flashed me back. And I was like, I wonder if that's why I initially had a negative impression of Fire Escape or Zombies on Broadway or something. Sometimes a music video can ruin a song for me. And I'm not saying that's what happened here, but it like changed the tone of the song for me. You know what I mean? Like if I hear the song separately, it sounds like this fun but serious lyric song about New York City. And I get these visions, like I said earlier, of Andrew going through the city. And that's kind of the music video I would have imagined. But I'm not a music video director, and I never will be. So it was really surprising and jarring to me. And like I said, I had forgotten about this video. Is it entertaining? Absolutely. Is it funny? Yep. But it's weird with the song to me. I think it would be with any of Andrew McMahon's songs. So it was surprising they went in that direction. I mean, it gets even crazier at times, not just the inflatables, but like they're in a restaurant and they're flinging their arms and something was on fire and they flick it or something and the flames go all over the people. And there's another scene where they're like cooking. There's a group of people cooking in a kitchen and the inflatables show up and start flipping their arms and a knife goes into the woman's eye. Yeah. Like it's so weird. And that whole like, it looks like they're in a movie theater, but then on the stage, there's a guy in like an animal head with an axe and he's covered in blood. It's so weird. It kind of took me away from the song, which I don't like, which is a quality I don't like in a music video, but separately, it was funny. It was entertaining. I just found that so jarring from like what I expected. Like I said, I'd actually forgotten about, I knew there was a music video and I knew it had inflatables in it, but I guess I just thought it was like Andrew McMahon out in the city with inflatables. Like I didn't realize there was a whole like story and like them basically getting into shenanigans out in the city.
I didn't remember some of that stuff you just said. Like I just, as you were saying it, I remember it. It's been forever since I've watched it. I'll have to go back and watch it after we get done, before I go to bed tonight. I remember the end with the little one.
The baby, yeah they have a baby inflatable.
And they like open up the stroller and like the people run away and the baby inflatable's just in there going nuts.
And there's a couple of weird like parts with Andrew too. So he's dressed as a priest in one scene. Like it's a really quick shot.
Does he marry them? I can't remember.
Oh, maybe that's what. Okay, maybe he does. I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't pick that up, but maybe that's what it. So he was marrying the inflatables.
I can't remember though. Now I feel like I should have. I'm sorry I didn't watch it. I didn't do my homework well enough.
No, that's cool. And then in another one, he's like the cat. He's got like a captain hat on. He's driving like a speedboat with them on it. It's just like so goofy. Just one other thing from me. So when you go back and watch it, check this little detail out. I'm familiar with what the band members look like, and I know their names and stuff. Zach Clark is in the video, very briefly. But there's another guy playing guitar, and I don't know who the heck he is.
Okay, I'll have to go back and look for that.
Yeah, I was like, is that Mikey with short hair? Is that Ryan Key of Yellowcard? Like, who is that guy? It goes really quick kind of across him, and I'm like, that's not Bobby. And I don't think the drummer was not Jay either. But it shows these guys, Zach included, it shows them each once very briefly.
Okay.
I just thought it was a strange video. It was kind of like, oh, we're in New York City and we need to put together this video, and I don't know, the regular guys aren't here, so we'll have these other guys fill in. Weird music video overall, but entertaining, of course. But all right, so let's kind of do some final thoughts here. Where does Fire Escape rank for you in the catalog?
Top 5.
Top 5?
Top 5, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
That's just because that's the personal connection to it, you know.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, I love it though. I love that.
I mean, we all have our own reasons for you know how we connect with the music and that sort of thing. But top 5, okay. I'm not sure where this one ranks for me. It's definitely higher than the middle, and it's like High Dive. So we mentioned High Dive briefly earlier. Like High Dive, I feel like it's like moved up over the last few years for me. And I think both of those songs, the reason is the live show.
There's so much energy with High Dive too, live.
So you talked a lot about how much you love Zombies on Broadway. You love the sound. We talked about how it's transformational, it seems, for Andrew's life. Andrew McMahon has some new music coming out lately. He's got some new songs, and it's definitely sounding like the more electronic style rather than your traditional instruments from what we've heard so far. And one of the same producers from some of the tracks of Zombies on Broadway is producing these songs. So, do you have any of the new songs that you like so far?
I love Stars. Stars is like, I don't think anything will ever take down Synesthesia,
Mm-hmm.
but Stars has had potential, has potential.
Wow.
The first time I ever heard it was on the Instagram preview that he put out for it, and I got chills like just hearing it. The first time I saw it in Cincy though and heard it all the way through, I cried all the way through it. I thought it was phenomenal. When I heard it on Spotify for the first time, I was just again just so emotional, blown away by the song as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely love Stars. I think it's one of the best songs he's ever done.
That's high praise.
Yeah, all three tracks lyrically have been Andrew. He's a top tier writer, so the lyrics have been really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt like Stars like had this perfect blend of like new and old, and I also like the other song like Ribbons and Pearls or whatever, the one that he was kind of
Smoking Ribbons. Yeah.
Smoking Ribbons. That was all over, and I really liked it. And then now it's just not been. It hasn't been released yet.
Yeah, I haven't
I
heard
thought
that
was
one
going
yet.
to be the song he was going to instead of Stars because I'm on the Dear Jack team, Drinks for Dear Jack. Just quickly referencing that, I'll talk more about that in a minute. But because we had hit a certain number, we had a Zoom call with him in the spring, and that's the song he previewed for us. Like he took us into the studio and we were like, is there anything we can hear? And he took us the phone or whatever into the studio and played part of that song. And then I think he'd played it on one of the live streams on Camp Wilderness too. And I thought that was going to be the first single, and now it just seems to have disappeared. I will say what I heard of that I loved. So
I feel like I heard a snippet of that song on Instagram. Somebody recorded it at a show where he played on the just him and a piano back in like September. I don't remember what show that was. No, it was in the spring. It was actually way back in the spring. I don't know where to find that clip, and I wish people would put everything on YouTube that they record because it's like I know how to find that. If you put on Instagram or Facebook only, it's like I can't go back and find it now.
yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what comes next out of this era. So, well, Andrew, thank you for being on the show with me today. Really appreciate it. I know you've got your own podcast, actually, a Packers podcast, huh?
Yeah, so I have a podcast called Packers Fans Only. It's on Apple and Spotify. Also, if you want to find me on Twitter, user is at capital PFO, lowercase NLY, Packers Fans Only on Twitter. Look me up that way. Maybe there's some Packers fans listening to this. My recording has been spotty this year because I have a new daughter. So It's just when I find time. It's been a little bit longer than what I'd like to admit since I recorded an episode. Going to try to get one out here this week, using this as a springboard to encourage me to record my own podcast. So it's not been a great season for the Packers. So some of that might have been intentional too. But
maybe not a great season for the Packers, but a good season to listen to Packers fans only, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you could commiserate with other fans.
Exactly. And then I am, as I mentioned before, part of the Dear Jack fundraising team, Drinks for Dear Jack. Steve's talked about Dear Jack on the show, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about what it is. You can go back and listen to that. It's Andrew's foundation that helps with young adults with cancer. And every year he does a 250K challenge. Steve had a great episode highlighting that challenge, so I am part of one of those teams. If you want to go look us up on Instagram, the handle is at drinks_for_Dear Jack, all one word, on Instagram.
Thanks for sharing that. Well, I just wanted to say again, thanks, but also, Andrew, you and Michelle are prime examples of the nice people that we've met through the Andrew McMahon fan group. So I just really appreciate your guys' friendship, and you were two of the first Andrew fans that we met, in the community. So at that Pontiac show a couple of years ago. So that I just really appreciate that, and appreciate you being on the show with me today. And it was fun talking about the song and kind of getting to know you a little bit better through the music of Andrew McMahon. And so thanks a lot.
Thank you for saying that. Michelle and I always are like, if we lived closer to them, we'd probably end up being friends with them, like even more than just the couple times we've seen each other at the shows and going out to eat afterwards. So thanks for saying that. We really like you guys too. So
Yeah, we had such a nice time having dinner with you guys after the Cincinnati show. That was so much fun.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to more of that. So I'm hoping. It sounds like I will hopefully see you at one of the summer shows. Hopefully things will line up and we can all get together again.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Well, thanks.